Hi guys, tonight we are going to take a very slow, quiet journey back in time, leaving behind the grand white marble of the palaces and the bright, open spaces of the Forum to wander through the shadows of ancient Rome's more forgotten corners. We will be exploring the darker, poorer, and perhaps more dangerous neighborhoods of the city, but we will do so from a place of absolute safety and stillness, letting the heavy atmosphere of the ancient night settle over us like a soft blanket. As you close your eyes and let your breath slow down, finding a rhythm that feels natural and effortless, you begin to see the city not as a series of monuments, but as a living, breathing labyrinth of stone and shadow. The sun has already dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky the color of bruised plums and deep indigo, and the air is beginning to cool, carrying the faint, earthy scent of the Tiber River mixed with the lingering heat of the day's stones. You find yourself standing at the edge of a narrow, winding street that leads away from the main thoroughfares, where the paving stones are no longer smooth and wide, but are, instead, uneven, worn down by centuries of footsteps and the heavy wheels of carts that have long since passed into history. The ground beneath your feet feels solid and cool, and as you take your first slow step forward, the sound is a soft, rhythmic scuff against the basalt blocks. The buildings on either side of you rise up tall and imposing, their upper stories leaning inward as if whispering secrets across the narrow gap of the sky, blocking out the last of the twilight and plunging the alleyway into a comforting, velvety dimness. These are the insulae, the crowded apartment blocks where the heartbeat of Rome truly pulses. And though they are old and weathered, they possess a quiet, somber beauty in the fading light. You notice the textures of the walls as you pass rough, crumbling brick, patches of faded red plaster, and the smooth, cold surface of a stone doorframe. You feel a sense of profound stillness, as if the city itself is exhaling after a long, frenetic day. The sounds here are different than in the grand squares. They are muffled and intimate, the distant clink of a ceramic bowl being set down on a wooden table, the low, rhythmic murmur of a mother humming a lullaby to a restless child, and the occasional soft creak of a shutter closing against the night air. A few paces ahead, a small oil lamp flickers in a niche carved into a wall, its tiny flame dancing gently and casting long amber shadows that stretch and pull across the uneven ground. The light is warm and golden, illuminating the swirls of dust dancing in the air and the deep, dark cracks between the paving stones where small patches of moss have managed to take hold. You continue to walk, your pace slow and deliberate, feeling the weight of your own limbs becoming heavier and more relaxed with every step you take. The air grows slightly thicker here, smelling of wood smoke, roasted chickpeas, and the sharp, salty tang of fermented fish sauce drifting from a nearby cookshop that is now quiet and dark. You pass an open doorway where the interior is swallowed by shadows, save for the faint glow of a dying hearth deep within, casting a soft, rhythmic pulse of orange light onto the street. There is a subtle tension in the air, the kind that comes with the territory of the city's deeper reaches. But it does not feel threatening to you. Instead, it feels like a heavy, protective layer, a reminder that the world is vast and full of mysteries that are now settling down for the night. You turn a corner into an even narrower passage, where the walls are so close you could reach out and touch both sides with your fingertips, the stone feeling cool and slightly damp against your skin. High above, a single star becomes visible in the narrow sliver of sky, a bright, steady point of silver light that seems to watch over your progress through the maze. The silence here is deeper, broken only by the occasional distant bark of a dog or the soft, hollow echo of your own footsteps, which sound like a heartbeat against the ancient earth. You see the faint silhouettes of laundry hanging from a high balcony, swaying almost imperceptibly in the cooling breeze like ghost flags marking the territory of the sleeping. As you move deeper into the neighborhood, the grander architecture of the city center feels like a distant memory, replaced by the honest, rugged reality of timber beams and stacked stone. You pass a small shrine to the Lares, the household gods, where a few withered flowers and a tiny guttering candle remain as offerings, the scent of melting beeswax mingling with the cool night air. The road begins to slope downward, leading you toward the lower, more shadowed parts of the district where the shadows pool like water and the light of the moon cannot reach. You feel a sense of calm curiosity, a gentle pull drawing you further into the heart of this nocturnal world, where the rules of the day no longer apply and the city reveals its true, unfiltered self. The darkness ahead is soft and inviting, a deep well of quiet that promises rest and the shedding of all worries. You notice the way the light catches on a puddle of water in a dip in the road, reflecting the dim glow of a distant lantern like a fallen piece of the sky. Each step feels more effortless than the last, as if the city is carrying you along on a slow, invisible current. You pass a row of boarded-up shops, their wooden fronts weathered and grey, holding within them the silence of empty spaces. The atmosphere is thick with history, the collective memory of the thousands who have walked these same stones, their lives woven into the very fabric of the walls around you. You feel a connection to them in this quiet moment, a shared understanding of the peace that comes when the noise of the world finally fades away. The air is still, not a breath of wind stirring the dust, and the silence seems to vibrate with a low, comforting hum. You are moving deeper now, into the parts of Rome where the maps grow vague and the streets wind in loops that defy logic. Yet you feel no desire to turn back. The darkness is not a void, but a presence, rich and textured, filled with the soft sounds of the city at resta, distant splash of water from a public fountain, the rustle of a stray cat moving through the shadows, the deep, rhythmic breathing of a city that has seen 1,000 years of nights. Your eyes have fully adjusted to the dimness, allowing you to see the subtle variations in the grey and black of the stone, the way the moonlight grazes the top edges of the rooftops far above, creating a crown of silver light for the humble buildings below. You feel a profound sense of heaviness in your eyelids, a gentle pressure that mirrors the descent of the night. Yet you continue to drift forward, your spirit light and unburdened. The path narrows further, the ground becoming more rugged as you leave the better-maintained areas behind, the stones beneath you feeling ancient and wise. You pass a heavy wooden gate, reinforced with iron bands that glint dully in the dark, leading to a courtyard where the silence is absolute. You can almost feel the dreams of the city rising up around you, a soft mist of thoughts and images that blur the edges of reality. The scent of damp earth and old stone becomes more pronounced, a grounding, ancient smell that speaks of permanence and the slow passage of time. You are a ghost in this landscape, a silent observer of a world that belongs to the night, moving with a fluidity that requires no effort. The deeper you go, the more the city seems to fold in on itself, creating a cocoon of shadow and stone that protects you from the outside world. The flickering lamps are fewer now, spaced further apart, leaving long stretches of pure, velvety darkness where you rely on the feel of the ground and the sound of the ambient quiet to guide you. You find yourself approaching an archway, a low, heavy structure of dark tufa stone that looks like the entrance to another world entirely, where the shadows are even deeper and the air even more still. As you pass under the weight of the arch, the temperature drops just a few degrees, a refreshing coolness that settles on your skin like a soft veil. Beyond the arch, the street opens up slightly into a small, desolate square, surrounded by the looming shapes of tenements that seem to reach for the stars. There is a sense of immense age here, as if this part of the city has remained unchanged since the dawn of time. A place where the past and the present exist in a single, quiet moment. You stand still for a heartbeat, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of the Roman night pressing gently against you, before your feet begin to move again, carrying you toward the mouth of a dark, inviting street that promises to lead you even further into the mysteries of the ancient dark. As you move beyond the heavy tufa archway and into the heart of the Subura, the air seems to grow even more still, holding the collective warmth of the thousands of souls who live packed tightly within these towering insulae. The street here is little more than a narrow ribbon of uneven basalt, worn smooth in the center and chipped at the edges, where the trickling water of a distant, leaking aqueduct pipe has carved a tiny, silver path through the grime of the day. You walk with a slow, rhythmic gait, your sandals making a soft, comforting thud against the earth, a sound that is immediately swallowed by the porous, ancient walls of the buildings pressing in around you. Here, the architecture is a patchwork of necessity timber frames filled with rubble and sun-dried brick, patched with layers of graying plaster that feel cool and slightly chalky if you were to brush your hand against them. You look up and see the balconies overlapping like the scales of a great sleeping beast, draped with the heavy, damp fabrics of tunics and cloaks that have been hung out to catch the evening moisture. The sense of shared life is overwhelming but gentle, a quiet tapestry of existence where every sound tells a story of survival and closeness. You pass a low window, its wooden shutter held open by a simple stone, and through the opening you catch the soft amber glow of a single tallow candle. Inside, the space is small, perhaps no larger than a modern closet, yet it is filled with the presence of a family. You hear the rhythmic, metallic scrape of a whetstone as a father sharpens a small iron blade for tomorrow's work. The sound periodic and hypnotic, like a slow pulse. Beside him, the faint rustle of straw mattresses being smoothed out for the night creates a soft, papery white noise that blends into the background of the city. There is no privacy here in the way the wealthy understand it, but there is a profound sense of communal belonging, a rhythm of life that requires everyone to move in harmony with their neighbors. You continue your slow stroll, noticing how the thinness of the walls allows the world to breathe as one. From a room above, you hear the muffled, low-pitched rumble of a grandfather's cough, followed by the sweet, high-pitched murmur of a young girl asking for a drink of water. These sounds are not intrusions. They are the lullaby of the neighborhood, a reminder that you are never truly alone in the dark. The smells here change with every few steps, the sharp, pungent aroma of cheap wine from a jar left near a doorway, the comforting, earthy scent of lentils simmering in a ceramic pot, and the ever-present smell of old wood and dust. You come to a small communal courtyard, a square of darkness where a single stone well sits in the center, its rim notched with deep grooves from centuries of ropes pulling up buckets of water. The air here is cooler, trapped by the high walls, and you stop for a moment to breathe it in, feeling the heaviness of the day finally falling away from your shoulders. A woman passes you silently, her head draped in a dark pallor, carrying a small lamp that casts a pool of gold around her feet. She gives you a slow, tired nod of acknowledgement, a gesture of shared endurance in the quiet hours. You follow the path as it twists deeper into the labyrinth, where the apartment blocks lean so close together that you can no longer see the sky, creating a tunnel of absolute peace. In these shared living spaces, the boundaries between families are marked only by hanging blankets or thin wooden partitions. And as you walk, you hear the soft, rhythmic creak of floorboards above you, telegraphing the movements of someone preparing for sleep. It is a slow, methodical dance of domesticity. You imagine the small shrines tucked into the corners of these crowded rooms, the tiny bronze or clay figures of the lares, smudged with soot, watching over the sleepers with sightless, protective eyes. The feeling of limited space does not feel claustrophobic in this dream. Instead, it feels like a warm embrace, a cocoon of humanity that shields the poor from the vast, cold indifference of the empire outside. You pass a doorway where a group of men are sitting on the threshold, their voices so low they are almost a hum, discussing the price of grain or the news from the docks in hushed tones that respect the approaching night. Their shadows are long and distorted against the brickwork, moving like slow-motion ghosts in the flicker of a nearby torch. You feel the texture of the air shifting as you move lower into the valley, becoming more humid and heavy with the scent of the river. The rhythm of the lower classes is one of constant, quiet, Moshuna perpetual cycle of labor and rest that is etched into the very stones you walk upon. You see a small shop, its front closed by heavy wooden slats, but through the gaps you can see the tools of a cobbler laid out in neat rows, their iron heads gleaming faintly in the dark. The silence of the tools is a testament to the hard work that will begin again at the first light of dawn. As you wander, you notice the small details that make this place a home. A tiny pot of herbs sitting on a high windowsill, a string of dried onions hanging from a beam, a child's wooden toy left forgotten on a doorstep. These objects feel significant in the stillness, markers of a life lived with intensity and grace despite the lack of material wealth. The narrowness of the street forces you to be mindful of every step, to feel the tilt of the ground and the way the shadows pool in the dips of the road. You pass a communal kitchen area, now mostly cold, where the large stone ovens still radiate a faint dying heat that warms your side as you walk by. The air is thick with the memory of the evening meal, a ghost scent of toasted bread and garlic that lingers in the rafters. You find yourself moving slower and slower, your body responding to the profound lethargy of the neighborhood. The conversations behind the walls begin to fade, replaced by the deep, steady sounds of heavy sleep. You hear a collective sigh of the building, the settling of timber and stone as the heat of the sun finally leaves the structures. The world is narrowing down to just this path, just this moment, and the soft friction of your breathing. You pass an open stairwell made of steep, narrow stone steps that disappear into the blackness of the upper floors, and for a second you catch the scent of lavender, small luxury, perhaps a sprig dried and placed under a pillow to ward off the city's harsher smells. It is a touch of tenderness in a world of hard edges. You are now deep within the heart of the district, where the grand monuments of the Palatine are nothing more than a distant, flickering memory. Here, life is measured in the strength of one's arms and the loyalty of one's neighbors. You feel a deep sense of respect for the resilience of these people, for the way they have carved out a world of meaning within these crowded, shadowed streets. The light of the few remaining lamps begins to stutter and die, one by one, as the oil runs dry, leaving the neighborhood to be lit only by the faint, diffused glow of the moon reflecting off the upper stories. The shadows become long, soft fingers that reach across the road, blurring the lines between the buildings and the ground. You feel a shift in the energy of the air. The domestic quiet is beginning to take on a different quality. The streets, which were filled with the gentle sounds of families settling down, are starting to feel more hollow, more expectant. The occasional sound of a heavy bolt being slid into place or a chain being rattled against a door echoes through the alleyways with a sharp, final clarity. You sense that the character of the city is changing, shifting from the intimate world of the home to the vast, unpredictable world of the deep night. The air grows cooler still, and a thin mist begins to rise from the low-lying areas near the river, swirling around your ankles like a cold, white smoke. The distant roar of the city, which usually sounds like a hive of bees, has subsided into a low, oceanic throb. You are walking toward the edge of this residential cluster, where the homes give way to the larger, darker warehouses and the silent, imposing walls of the workshops. The path ahead is shrouded in a thicker darkness, a place where the flickering yellow light of the domestic lamps no longer reaches. You feel a gentle transition in your own spirit, a readiness to leave the warmth of the crowded insulae for the more mysterious, silent reaches of the city that only wake when the sun is gone. The transition toward nightfall is almost complete. The sky above the narrow canyon of the street has turned a deep velvet black, and the stars are hidden by the towering heights of the buildings. You continue to move forward, your steps now almost silent on the cooling stone. As the last of the voices fade away and the city prepares to show you its other face, the one that belongs to the moon, the shadows, and the secrets that dwell in the deepest, darkest corners of Rome. As you move further away from the small, domestic islands of the apartment blocks, the transition into the deeper night of ancient Rome feels like a slow descent into a pool of cool, still water. The air has lost the last of its golden warmth, replaced by a crisp, silver clarity that makes the textures of the city feel more pronounced against your skin. The stones beneath your feet, once warmed by the midday sun, are now cold and unapologetically hard, their ancient surfaces smoothed by millions of lives before yours. Yet they hold a quiet strength that grounds you with every deliberate step. The atmosphere has shifted subtly. The communal hum of families and the rhythmic sounds of domesticity have faded into the background, leaving a vast, hollow silence that is only broken by the most delicate of sounds. You hear the distant, melodic dripping of water from a cracked terracotta pipe, each drop hitting a stone basin with a clear, resonant note that echoes through the narrow corridor like the ticking of a clock made of liquid. The light is much dimmer now, as the few public torches positioned at major junctions begin to burn low, their flames sighing and sputtering as the oil ebbs away. The shadows are no longer just patches of darkness. They have become gentle, moving entities that stretch and fold across the walls, as if the buildings themselves are breathing in the moonlight. You notice the way your own shadow dances softly ahead of you, a long, elegant shape that leads the way into the unknown. The stone walls on either side of you are thick with history, and as you brush your fingertips along the rough-hewn travertine, you feel the gritty dust of centuries, a tactile reminder of the city's endurance. The world feels increasingly uncertain, not in a way that causes alarm, but in a way that invites a deeper state of presence and calm. You are a solitary traveler in a city that never truly sleeps, but right now it is dreaming deeply. Far off, perhaps several streets away, the low murmur of a night watchman's voice drifts on the breeze, a soft, unintelligible rumble that reinforces the sense of your own quiet isolation. The air here is thinner and smells of damp stone, old river silt, and the faint sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine trailing down from a hidden garden high above a brick wall. You find yourself focusing on the sound of your own breathing, which has become slow and steady, matching the heavy, rhythmic pace of your walk. Every footstep you take is an echo, a soft thud that travels up through your legs and reminds you of your connection to the earth. You pass a small, circular plaza where a single fountain remains active, the water overflowing its marble lip and spilling onto the ground in a shimmering sheet of silver. The sound of the water is a constant, soothing white noise that seems to wash away the lingering thoughts of the day, leaving your mind as clear and still as the surface of the fountain itself. The buildings here are taller and more imposing, their windows like dark, unblinking eyes that watch your progress with a silent, neutral gaze. You see a stray cat, a sleek silhouette of charcoal fur, slip silently through a gap in a wooden gate, its movements so fluid and effortless that it seems to dissolve into the darkness. The texture of the environment is incredibly rich. You see the play of light on a patch of wet moss growing in the shade of an archway, the deep, velvet black of an alleyway that leads toward the river, and the pale, ghostly glow of a marble fragment embedded in a wall of common brick. You feel the cool dampness of the night air on your face, a gentle pressure that encourages you to pull your cloak a little tighter, the fabric feeling soft and familiar against your shoulders. As you continue, the layout of the streets becomes more erratic, twisting and turning in ways that suggest a lack of planning, an organic growth of stone and wood that has evolved over 1,000 years. You pass under a low-hanging balcony where the wood is silvered with age, and you can hear the soft, rhythmic creak of the timber as it contracts in the night air. It is a slow, meditative sound, like the city shifting its weight in its sleep. The silence is not empty. It is full of the weight of the city's presence, a heavy, comforting blanket of time. You notice the subtle variations in the darkness, how some shadows are as thin as smoke, while others are as dense as iron. You are moving through a landscape of greys and blacks, where the only color comes from the faint, orange glow of a distant fire or the pale blue of the moon-drenched sky. The feeling of space is changing. The narrow passages open occasionally into small, neglected courtyards where the weeds grow tall between the paving stones and the air feels still and forgotten. In these spaces, the history of Rome feels even more tangible, as if the ghosts of the past are resting just out of sight, satisfied with the quiet of the night. Your pace remains slow, never hurried, allowing you to absorb every minute detail, the way a discarded pottery shard glints in the dark, the pattern of cracks in a stucco wall that looks like a map of a distant land, the cool sensation of a breeze passing through an archway. You feel a sense of profound relaxation, a letting go of the self as you become part of the city's nocturnal flow. The distant murmurs of the city have transformed into a low-frequency vibration, a hum that you feel in your chest rather than hear with your ears. You pass a small shrine to a forgotten deity, the stone worn featureless by time, yet still possessing a quiet dignity in the gloom. The smell of the river is stronger now, a dark, watery scent that speaks of the deep currents of the Tiber moving silently through the heart of the city. You find yourself leaning into the silence, finding a strange and beautiful comfort in the absence of light. The road beneath you begins to change, the well-fitted blocks of the central districts giving way to more irregular, jagged stones that require a bit more attention to navigate. You are entering a part of the city where the maintenance is less frequent, where the walls are scarred with graffiti and the doors are reinforced with heavy iron bars. Despite the rougher appearance of your surroundings, the sense of calm remains unshaken. You are a peaceful observer, moving through the layers of the city like a dream through a mind. You see a pile of discarded building materials, shattered bricks and lumps of mortar resting in a corner, their shapes softened by the shadows until they look like a cluster of sleeping animals. The air is slightly more stagnant here, holding the sense of the day's labor longer than the open squares. Yet it is still punctuated by the occasional draft of fresh, cold air from the river. You notice a flicker of movement high above, a bird or a bat crossing the narrow strip of stars, a reminder of the life that continues to exist above the heavy stone world. Your journey is taking you deeper into a district that feels neglected by the sun, a place where the architecture is utilitarian and the shadows are deep enough to hide entire worlds. You feel the ground slope more steeply now, leading you down toward the lower levels of the valley where the moisture collects and the silence is at its most absolute. The stone walls here feel cooler, almost clammy, and the sound of your footsteps takes on a flatter, more muffled quality, as if the very air is absorbing the noise. You see the faint outline of a massive, crumbling warehouse ahead, its dark entrance looking like a cavern carved into the side of a mountain. There is a sense of immense weight here, the weight of goods once stored and the weight of the people who labored within these walls. You continue to drift forward, your movements as fluid as the shadows themselves, feeling a sense of quiet anticipation for what lies in the even deeper darkness ahead. The environment is becoming more stripped back, more elemental, just stone, shadow, and the slow, inexorable passage of time. You pass a row of small, lightless windows that sit level with the ground, suggesting cellar dwellings where the city's most humble residents find their rest. The quiet tension you felt earlier has smoothed out into a flat, calm expanse of night. You are approaching a neighborhood that the grand histories rarely mention, a place of rough edges and deep, unlit corners where the city's heart beats with a raw, honest rhythm. The streets are narrower still, the buildings more precarious, leaning in as if to shield the path from the sky. You can feel the transition in the texture of the air. It is thicker, more secretive, and carries the faint, metallic temps of iron and the earthy smell of old, wet wood. You are walking toward the edge of a district that feels apart from the rest of Rome, a place where the rules of the Forum are a world away and the only thing that matters is the quiet, steady progress of the night. Your feet find the rhythm of the uneven ground with ease, your body adjusting to the tilts and turns of the path as if you have walked this way 1,000 times before. The darkness ahead is not a wall, but a doorway, inviting you to see the city as it truly is when all the masks of power and wealth have been stripped away. You are almost there, at the threshold of the rougher quarters, where the shadows pool like ink and the silence is so deep it feels like music. The last of the city's distant lights have disappeared behind you, leaving you in a world of pure, monochromatic beauty, where every texture is a story and every shadow is a sanctuary. You feel the heavy, peaceful weight of sleep pressing against your consciousness. Yet you continue to drift, a silent witness to the enduring soul of the ancient night, moving ever deeper into the heart of the forgotten streets. As you leave the last of the fading lanterns behind, the transition into this more neglected district feels like a soft, heavy curtain being drawn across the world, isolating you in a realm where the passage of time is measured not by the ticking of clocks or the decrees of emperors, but by the slow, relentless erosion of stone against the elements. The air here is noticeably cooler, clinging to the dampness of the low-lying earth, and it carries a thick, grounding scent of ancient dust, wet clay, and the faint, bitter tang of iron. The buildings in this part of Rome are veterans of 1,000 storms. Their facades a mosaic of survival, where layers of grey plaster have peeled away to reveal the skeletal remains of timber frames and the rugged, uneven heart of sun-dried mud bricks. You walk with a slow, deliberate grace, feeling the grit of the road beneath your sandals, a texture that is both coarse and strangely comforting in its honesty. There is no pretense here. The grandeur of the marble temples has been replaced by the quiet resilience of structures that have leaned into one another for support, their upper stories sagging toward the center of the street as if sharing a tired, communal sigh. You notice the way the residents have adapted to the decay, patching holes in the walls with bundles of tightly woven reeds or thin slabs of slate scavenged from more prosperous ruins. These small details of repair are like scars on a well-loved face, speaking of a persistence that does not ask for recognition. As you move deeper, the silence takes on a granular quality, composed of 1,000 tiny, distinct sounds that weave together into a seamless blanket of white noise. You hear the faint, rhythmic scratching of a small animal burrowing into a pile of discarded straw, the distant, hollow clatter of a loose shutter swinging in a negligible breeze, and the soft, repetitive thrum of the river somewhere far to your left. The life here is inward-facing and intensely private, yet you feel a sense of profound connection to the spirits of those who rest behind these weathered doors. You pass a communal doorway where the stone threshold has been worn into a smooth, deep curve by generations of feet, a testament to the thousands of times people have crossed from the uncertainty of the street to the sanctuary of their homes. Near the base of a wall, you see a small, handmade toy horse carved from a scrap of pine resting in the shadows, its wooden surface polished by the touch of a child's hand. It is a quiet marker of joy in a landscape of struggle, a reminder that the human spirit finds ways to play even in the darkest corners. The light of the moon is your only guide now, casting a pale, pearlescent glow over the scene that turns the crumbling brick into silver and the deep shadows into pools of ink. You feel your own pace slowing even further, your heartbeat sinking with the heavy, unhurried pulse of the district. There is no urgency here, only the long, slow endurance of the night. You notice the way the narrow alleys branch off like the roots of an old tree, disappearing into a darkness that feels thick and protective. In some of these windows, you see the faint, ghostly shimmer of a reflection on a piece of cheap, bubbly glass, a rare luxury that suggests a family's prized possession. The sense of space is tight and intimate, yet it does not feel restrictive. Instead, it feels like a well-worn garment that has shaped itself to the body over many years. You pass a small workshop where the smell of tanned leather lingers in the air, a sharp, earthy aroma that speaks of the day's hard labor, now stilled by the arrival of the stars. The tools inside are likely laid out in a familiar order, waiting for the calloused hands that will reclaim them at dawn. You see a low stone bench built into the side of an insula, its surface pockmarked and uneven, where perhaps the elders of the neighborhood sit during the day to watch the world go by. Now, in the deep of the night, it sits empty and silent, a cold monument to the passage of time. The texture of the walls changes as you walk, moving from rough brick to smooth, cold tufa, and occasionally a patch of damp moss that feels like velvet against your palm. You are aware of the subtle movements of the city at Restaway. A curtain of heavy wool flutters in an open window, the soft, rhythmic creak of a rope bed settling under the weight of a sleeper, and the distant, muffled bark of a dog that sounds like it is coming from another world entirely. This is a place of routines that have remained unchanged for centuries. A cycle of waking and sleeping that is as old as the hills upon which the city was built. You feel a deep sense of peace in this anonymity. A relaxation that comes from knowing you are merely one more shadow in a city of millions. The ground beneath you slopes gently downward, leading you toward a small, tucked-away square that feels as though it hasn't been visited by sunlight in 100 years. The buildings here are taller and even more precarious, their wooden balconies held up by thick, darkened beams of oak that look like the ribs of a giant whale. You see a small, dry fountain in the center of the square, its basin filled with the fallen leaves of a lone, scrawny plane tree that has managed to take root in a crack in the pavement. The leaves rustle softly as you pass, a dry, papery sound that is the only greeting you receive. The air is still, almost expectant, as if the neighborhood is holding its breath in the middle of a long, deep dream. You notice a small, handwritten sign above a door. Its charcoal letters faded, but still legible. Perhaps an advertisement for a midwife or a teacher of basic letters. A tiny beacon of civilization in a sea of neglect. These are the details of survival. The small ways in which the people here support one another and create a world of their own. You feel the heaviness of sleep pulling at your own limbs, a gentle, magnetic force that encourages you to find a place of stillness. The shadows here are soft and inviting, offering 1,000 hiding places where one can simply exist without being seen. You pass an archway that leads into a small courtyard, and as you enter, the sound of the rest of the city vanishes completely, replaced by a silence so profound it feels like a physical weight. The walls around you are high and dark, blocking out everything but a small rectangular patch of the deep indigo sky where a single, bright star hangs like a diamond. You see a stack of ceramic jars leaning against a wall, their rounded shapes catching the moonlight and glowing with a soft, internal radiance. Each jar is different, some tall and slender, others squat and sturdy, and they represent the simple necessities of life: oil, wine, grain, water. They are the silent sentinels of the household, standing guard over the family's meager stores. You find yourself drawn to a small, recessed niche in the corner of the courtyard, where a stone ledge provides a perfect place to rest. You move toward it slowly, your footsteps silent on the dusty ground, and as you sit, you feel the cold, solid strength of the stone supporting you. The wall behind you is rough and cool, and you lean your head back against it, closing your eyes for a moment to better hear the music of the night. You hear the slow, rhythmic drip of water from a nearby roof, the distant, melodic chime of a bell, and the soft, repetitive sigh of the wind as it threads through the narrow gaps between the buildings. This is the heart of the city, not the one made of gold and marble, but the one made of bone and breath. You feel a sense of immense gratitude for this quiet moment, for the opportunity to see the world as it truly is, when the noise of the day has been stripped away. The neighborhood around you is sleeping, its millions of secrets tucked away behind thin walls and heavy doors, and you are the only witness to its silent beauty. The sense of age in this place is overwhelming, a weight of history that is both humbling and deeply comforting. You realize that these buildings have seen the rise and fall of countless lives, and they will continue to stand long after you are gone, a permanent fixture in the ever-shifting landscape of the human story. The air is so still now that you can hear the faint, high-pitched hum of the city's energy, a vibration that seems to come from the earth itself. You feel your body becoming lighter, as if you are merging with the shadows around you, becoming a part of the stone and the dust and the silence. The world is narrowing down to just this small courtyard, just this cold stone ledge, and the rhythmic cycle of your own breathing. You watch as a thin sliver of moonlight moves across the ground, illuminating a patch of weeds and a few scattered pebbles before disappearing into the darkness once more. It is a slow, silent theater of light and shadow, and you are the only audience. You feel a sense of profound resilience, not just in the buildings, but in yourself. A realization that you too can endure the hardships of the world and find peace in the quiet moments. The night is far from over, yet you feel as though you have reached a destination of sorts, a place of ultimate stillness where the worries of the outside world cannot reach you. You are safe here, protected by the heavy walls and the deep shadows and the shared silence of the sleeping city. The transition into sleep feels natural and inevitable, a slow sinking into the velvet depths of the night. You find yourself observing a small, weathered door across the courtyard, its wood cracked and grey with age, yet held together by a sturdy iron bolt. You imagine the life that exists behind that door, the simple meals, the quiet conversations, the shared dreams, and you feel a sense of kinship with the people you will never meet. From your quiet, sheltered vantage point in the recess of the ancient stone wall, you watch as the deep indigo of the Roman night thickens, turning the narrow corridor of the street into a river of soft, charcoal-colored shadows. The stone against your back is solid and cold, a grounding weight that seems to absorb the last remnants of your daily worries, leaving you as a silent, invisible observer of this hidden world. The atmosphere is one of profound, slow-motion peace, where every movement is deliberate and every sound is softened by the heavy, humid air of the lowlands. Far down the lane, where the street bends slightly toward the river, you see a small, amber glower, single oil lamp carried by a lone figure, returning home after a long day at the docks or the kilns. The light is a tiny, fragile point in the vastness of the dark, bobbing rhythmically with each slow step, casting a long, wavering shadow that stretches out toward you like a silent greeting. As the person nears, you hear the faint, metallic chink of a key ring and the soft, tired scuff of leather against the uneven basalt, sounds that are intimate and comforting in their repetition. They pass by without seeing you, a silhouette of weary grace, and as they reach a heavy wooden door, the sound of the bolt sliding home is a dull, resonant thud that signals the finality of the day's labor. The silence that follows is even deeper than before, a velvety blanket that settles over the square, broken only by the distant, melodic chime of a water clock or the muffled, low-pitched murmur of two neighbors talking through an upper-story window. Their voices are a hushed vibration, a series of vowels that rise and fall like the tide, discussing nothing of great importance, perhaps the weather, or the price of oil, or the health of a child, but the sound is a tether to humanity, a reminder of the quiet resilience that thrives in these neglected corners. You watch the way the moonlight, now high in silver, catches the edges of the crumbling terracotta roof tiles, making them glint like the scales of a sleeping dragon. The textures are so vivid in your mind. The grainy surface of the brick, the smooth, cold curve of a discarded amphora, and the soft, dusty smell of the earth that has been baked by 1,000 years of sun. Another figure appears from a side alley, a woman draped in a heavy wool pallor, moving with a quiet fluidity as she carries a small ceramic jug to a communal fountain nearby. You hear the thin, silvery stream of water as it fills the vessel, a bubbling, crystalline sound that seems to cleanse the air of its stillness. She pauses for a moment, looking up at the narrow strip of stars visible between the leaning buildings. her breath a faint, ghostly mist in the cooling air, before she turns and fades back into the shadows of her doorway. Every action is a slow-motion ritual of survival and rest. You feel a sense of immense calm as you realize that this cycle has repeated for centuries. A steady, unhurried pulse that transcends the rise and fall of empires. The air grows slightly more still, the breeze dying down until not even the laundry on the high balcony stirs. You notice a cat sitting atop a low wall across from you, its eyes too pale. Glowing embers that reflect the moonlight as it watches the slow dance of dust motes in a shaft of silver light. The cat's tail twitches once, a tiny, silent movement, before it tucks its paws beneath its chest and settles into a state of perfect, feline meditation. You find your own breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the city, each inhale bringing in the scent of damp moss and old, sun-warmed stone, each exhale releasing the last bit of tension from your limbs. The shadows in the doorways seem to grow deeper, more inviting, like soft pockets of sleep waiting to be claimed. You see a light flicker out in a window high above, then another, as the neighborhood surrenders to the inevitable pull of the night. The distant sounds of the greater city, the roar of the carts on the main roads, the shouts of the night watch, the clatter of the taverns are, so far away they sound like the dull hum of a seashell held to your ear. Here, in the heart of the Subura's quietest reach, the world is reduced to the immediate, the tactile, and the serene. You observe a man leaning against a doorframe a few houses down, smoking a small pipe or perhaps just taking in the night air. He remains perfectly still for several minutes, a statue of quiet contemplation, before he steps inside and pulls the heavy curtain shut. The texture of the silence changes as more people withdraw, becoming thicker and more resonant, like the space inside a great cathedral after the choir has finished. You feel the cool dampness of the night beginning to settle on your cloak, a gentle, refreshing weight that encourages you to stay just a little longer in your safe, dark niche. The stone walls around you seem to whisper the histories of those who have leaned against them before. A collective memory of rest and endurance that flows into you, making you feel ancient and weightless at the same time. You watch a moth fluttering around a dying wall lamp, its wings making a soft, papery sound against the ceramic. A tiny drama of light and shadow that eventually ends as the flame gutters and dies, leaving only the silver moon to rule the street. The darkness is not empty. It is filled with the presence of the sleeping city, a heavy, warm energy that pulses beneath the surface of the silence. You see the faint outline of a small shrine at the corner of the square, where a few withered garlands of flowers hang motionless in the dark, their scent a faint, sweet ghost on the air. These small acts of faith and beauty are the threads that hold the neighborhood together, a quiet insistence on grace in the midst of poverty. Your eyes drift to the patterns of the paving stones, which look like a river of frozen silver under the direct light of the moon, each crack and crevice a tiny canyon filled with shadow. You feel a profound sense of safety in your anonymity, a realization that in this vast ancient maze you are free to simply be, to watch and listen without the need to participate. The movement in the street becomes even more sparse. A group of 3 men walk past at a distance, their footsteps are rhythmic, hollow, echoing that fades slowly into the labyrinth, their low laughter a soft, pleasant sound that doesn't jar the stillness, but rather enhances it. They are moving with the easy, unhurried gait of those who know every stone and shadow of their home. You feel a wave of relaxation wash over you as you realize that the world has finally slowed down to a pace that the heart can follow. The air is now quite cold, but it is a clean, bracing cold that makes the warmth of your own body feel more pronounced. You notice the way the light reflects off a puddle of water near the fountain, a perfect circle of silver that seems to hold the entire sky within its small, humble boundaries. It is a reminder that beauty exists everywhere, even in the mud and the cracks of the city's poorest streets. The sense of age in the buildings around you becomes more palpable as the light grows dimmer. You can see the uneven layers of brick and timber, the sagging lintels, and the smooth, worn corners of the stone, all of it telling a story of a city that has learned how to rest. You find yourself focusing on a single, dark window across the way, wondering about the dreams being dreamt behind it, the soft, rhythmic breathing of a family huddled together for warmth and safety. It is a beautiful, heavy thought that makes your own eyelids feel weighted with a gentle, comfortable pressure. The transition toward the late-night atmosphere is beginning. The last of the domestic sounds have vanished, leaving only the elemental voices of the night. You hear the deep, distant groan of a heavy gate being locked somewhere far off, a sound that resonates through the ground like a heartbeat. The moonlight seems to grow more intense as the ambient light of the city dies away, turning the world into a study in high contrast, silver and black. You feel as though you are the only one awake in a city of ghosts and dreamers, a privileged witness to the secret life of Rome. The street is now entirely empty of people, leaving the stage to the shadows and the stones. The air is so still that you can hear the faint, high-pitched whistle of the wind through a narrow gap in the rooftops, a lonely, melodic sound that is both haunting and deeply soothing. You find yourself sinking further into the stone recess, your body finding the perfect angle of repose, your mind drifting like a leaf on a slow-moving stream. The sense of time has dissolved. There is only this moment, this cold stone, this silver light. You observe the way the shadows of the laundry lines create complex, shifting patterns on the ground like a secret language written in the dark. The neighborhood has reached a state of total equilibrium, a perfect balance between life and stillness. You are no longer just observing the city. You are part of its nocturnal breath, a silent participant in its long, slow rest. The feeling of the neglected buildings around you is one of dignity rather than decayed. They have stood for so long, and they will continue to stand, providing shelter and sanctuary to those who need it most. You feel a deep, quiet respect for the resilience of the wood and the stone, for the way they hold the warmth of the day long into the night. The scent of the river is more prominent now, a dark, watery smell that brings with it a sense of the vast, natural world that exists beyond the city walls. You realize that even in the heart of the greatest empire on earth, the night remains untamed and beautiful, a space where everyone is equal in their need for sleep. As you sit in your small, recessed niche, leaning your head against the cool, coarse stone of the ancient insula, you feel the profound weight of the deep night finally settling over Rome like a heavy, velvet cloak. The atmosphere in this neglected quarter has shifted from the quiet murmurs of families settling down to a state of absolute, crystalline stillness, where the very concept of time seems to have slowed, stretching out like the long, dark shadows that pool at your feet. The cooling air has lost all its daytime heat, becoming crisp and thin, carrying a sharp, clean scent of wet river clay, old tufa stone, and the distant, metallic temps of iron from a closed smithy down the way. The silence of the streets is nearly total now, a rich and textured quiet that is not an absence of sound but rather a canvas for the most delicate, microscopic noises of the city at rest. You close your eyes for a long, luxurious moment, listening to the rhythmic, slow-motion music of the Roman night, the faint, crystalline drip of water from a cracked overhead cistern that strikes a puddle with a clear, resonant ping, the soft, papery rustle of a dry vine rubbing against a brick wall in a negligible draft, and the deep, low-frequency hum of the city itself, a vibration that seems to come from the heavy earth beneath the paving stones. The small amber oil lamps that had been flickering in distant windows have all gone out now, leaving the street to be illuminated solely by the pale silver glow of the moon, which hangs high above the narrow canyon of the buildings like a pristine marble coin. This silver light washes over the uneven basalt road, turning the deep ruts left by centuries of carts into rivers of soft charcoal and highlighting the smooth, worn edges of the stone blocks until they resemble a mosaic of frozen water. You feel a sense of profound, protective isolation in this moment, as if the rest of the vast, bustling empire has simply ceased to exist, leaving you as the sole custodian of this peaceful, forgotten world. The few remaining public torches at the far intersections have burned down to their last, sighing embers casting a faint, dying orange pulse that occasionally glints off a wet patch of moss, before fading back into the dominant cool blues and greys of the moonlight. You find your own body responding to this ultimate deceleration. Your breathing has become incredibly slow and shallow, a calm, rhythmic cycle that perfectly matches the heavy, unhurried pulse of the sleeping district. There is absolutely no urgency here, no demands on your time, no noise to jar your senses, only the vast, slow endurance of the ancient night. You open your eyes and look across the small, desolate square, noticing the way a thin, ghostly mist has begun to rise from the low ground near the river, curling around the bases of the towering tenements like a soft, white smoke that blurs the harsh lines of the architecture. The buildings themselves seem to have grown larger and more protective in the dark, their dark, shuttered windows resembling closed eyelids, their leaning wooden balconies silent and still as they hold the dreams of thousands of souls. You notice the small details that become visible only when the world is this quiet. The pattern of cracked plaster on a wall that looks like the delta of a great river, the pale glint of a discarded oyster shell embedded in the mud of a side alley, and the soft, velvety texture of the shadows that seem to have a physical presence, inviting you to lose yourself in their depths. A single stray dog, its coat a mottled grey that blends perfectly with the stone, trots silently across the far end of the square. Its paws make no sound on the dusty ground, and it doesn't look your way, moving with the purposeful, quiet grace of a creature that belongs entirely to the nocturnal world. You feel a deep, comforting sense of anonymity, a realization that in this space you are completely free from the expectations of the waking world, a silent spirit drifting through a landscape of beautiful, monochromatic peace. The sense of time slowing down becomes even more palpable as you watch a single, bright star burning in the narrow sliver of sky above the rooftops. It seems to hang motionless, a steady, cold fire that has watched over this city for 1,000 years, and will continue to do so for 1,000 more. The air is now quite cold against your face, but it is a refreshing, grounding cold that makes the warmth of your heavy cloak feel incredibly luxurious and safe. You feel a wave of deep, heavy relaxation wash over your limbs, a gentle, magnetic pull that makes the idea of movement feel like a slow, beautiful dance. The silence seems to grow even thicker as the last, far-off sound of a heavy bolt sliding into place on a distant warehouse door echoes through the labyrinth. A dull, resonant thump that signals the city is now completely locked away for the night. The textures of the world are so vivid in your mind. The grainy, cool surface of the stone against your back, the soft wool of your cloak, the dry dust beneath your feet, and the heavy, humid air filling your lungs. You find yourself focusing on the rhythm of your own heart, a slow, steady thud that anchors you to this perfect moment of stillness. The neighborhood is a living, breathing organism that has finally found its rest. Its millions of secrets and struggles tucked away safely behind the thick, silent walls of the insulae. You feel a profound respect for this quiet resilience, for the way the city sheds its frantic daytime persona to reveal its true, calm, and ancient soul in the dark. The light of the moon shifts almost imperceptibly, moving a shadow a few inches across the ground. A silent clock that measures the passage of the night in increments of absolute peace. You find yourself drifting on the edge of sleep, your consciousness expanding to fill the quiet square, feeling a deep connection to the stones, the mist, and the silent, starlit sky. There is a sense of immense gratitude for this experience, for the opportunity to see Rome not as a grand monument of power, but as a living, breathing sanctuary of quiet human lives. The air is so still now that a fallen leaf, brown and brittle, resting on the paving stones, does not move at all. A tiny monument to the total absence of wind. You feel the heavy, comfortable weight of sleep pressing against your eyes. Yet a gentle curiosity remains, a soft desire to see what lies just beyond the next dark corner of this beautiful, sleeping maze. You decide to rise from your stone niche, doing so with a slow, deliberate fluidity that requires no effort at all, your muscles feeling heavy and relaxed as you stand. The ground beneath your sandals feels incredibly solid and real, a reassuring anchor in a world of shifting silver and grey. You take your first step forward, and the sound is a soft, rhythmic scuff that is immediately absorbed by the silence. A gentle pulse that marks your progress through the sleeping city. You find yourself continuing to walk slowly, leaving the small, quiet courtyard behind and moving back into the network of nearly empty streets, where the buildings lean in close to whisper their ancient secrets to the dark. The road ahead is a ribbon of silver light and deep, velvety shadow, winding predictably yet mysteriously through the heart of the district. You pass an open archway where the interior is swallowed by a darkness so profound it looks like solid ink, yet it feels warm and inviting, a place of ultimate rest. Your pace remains unhurried, a slow, meditative stroll that allows you to savor every minute texture and sound of the late-night atmosphere. You notice the way the light catches on a smooth piece of marble embedded in a rough tufa wall, making it glow like a pale, underwater gem. The air seems to grow even stiller as you walk, the thin mist at your ankles swirling gently with the motion of your passage before settling back into a state of perfect calm. You are a solitary traveler in a world of dreams, moving with a light heart and a quiet spirit through the very depths of the Roman night. Far off, the low, melodic chime of a distant water clock marks the passage of another hour, but the sound is so soft and slow that it doesn't disturb the peace. Instead, it reinforces the sense that time has become a slow-moving river, carrying you gently toward the dawn. You pass a long, blank wall of a warehouse, its heavy timbered doors sealed with iron bars that glint dully in the moonlight, holding within them the silence of thousands of amphorae and bales of wool. The smell of the river is slightly stronger here, a dark, rich aroma of water and wet earth that speaks of the great Tiber moving silently just a few blocks away, carrying the city's secrets out to the vast, open sea. You feel a wave of profound contentment, a realization that you are exactly where you need to be, a silent observer of a world at perfect peace. Your steps carry you deeper into the network of narrow alleys, where the silence is so deep that you can hear the faint, rhythmic sound of your own breathing, a steady, calming rhythm that guides you forward like a soft, internal compass. The world has narrowed down to just this silver path, just this cold, ancient stone, and the immense, comforting weight of the sleeping city around you. You continue to drift, a peaceful ghost in a landscape of pure, monochromatic beauty, allowing the night to guide your steps as you wander further into the heart of the forgotten streets, moving slowly, calmly, and without a single care in the world. As you step away from the widest square and into the narrowest of the back alleys, the world seems to fold in on itself, creating a cocoon of ancient stone and cool, silent air that presses gently against your skin. This is the very marrow of the city, a place where the grand intentions of architects have been weathered away by centuries of human life, leaving behind a landscape that is organic, irregular, and deeply peaceful in its decay. Your sandals make a soft, rhythmic scuff against the basalt blocks of the path, which are no longer the large, polygonal stones of the main roads, but are instead smaller, smoother cobbles, worn into rounded mounds by the passage of millions of footsteps. The ground beneath your feet feels incredibly solid and reliable, a foundation that has held firm since the days of the kings, and you find yourself matching your pace to the slow, heavy pulse of the earth itself. The walls on either side of you are so close that you can reach out and brush your fingertips against them as you walk, feeling the incredible variety of textures that the night has to offer. One hand glides over a patch of cold, damp tufa, its volcanic grain feeling like coarse sand against your skin. The other hand finds a section of smooth, lime-based plaster that has been polished by the shoulders of laborers leaning against it for generations. In the deep shadows, you feel the occasional intrusion of a brick's sharp corner or the soft, yielding velvet of a thick layer of moss that has claimed a damp crevice where a drainage pipe once leaked. These tactile sensations are your anchors in the dimness, grounding you in the physical reality of a city that is currently dreaming. The ambient sounds here are so faint that they require a special kind of attention, a softening of the mind to perceive the melodic complexity of the near silence. You hear the far-off hollow echo of a single drop of water falling into a deep, stone-lined cistern, a sound that resonates with a clear, metallic plink that seems to hang in the still air for seconds after it has vanished. From behind a heavy, iron-studded door, you catch the rhythmic, slow-motion creak of a wooden hoist settling into its housing, a low-frequency groan that speaks of the day's heavy lifting now long concluded. The air is perfectly still, yet it feels as though it is vibrating with the collective breath of the thousands of people sleeping in the rooms above you. You look up and see the jagged silhouette of the rooftops against a sky that has turned from velvet black to a deep, resonant charcoal, a color so rich it feels as though you could reach up and touch it. The narrow ribbon of stars overhead is beginning to dim, their sharp, silver points softening into pale smudges of light as the atmosphere thickens with the approach of a new day. You pass a small arched opening that leads into a lightless stable, and the air that drifts out is warm and earthy, smelling of dry hay, old leather, and the sweet, heavy scent of resting grain. It is a comforting, rural smell in the heart of the urban maze, a reminder of the city's dependence on the fields and the animals that sustain it. You move forward with a fluidity that feels almost weightless, your limbs heavy with the pleasant lethargy of the late hour, yet your mind is clear and observant, taking in the small, beautiful details that the sun usually hides. You notice the way the moonlight reflects off a single, large iron ring embedded in a wall, used perhaps for tethering a mule or securing a gate. It glows with a dull, silver luster, its surface pitted by rust and time. You see a small pile of white marble dust in a corner near a stonemason's shop, looking like a drift of fallen snow in the darkness, and you imagine the fine, gritty feel of it between your fingers. The shadows in these back alleys are not frightening. They are soft and protective, like the folds of a heavy wool blanket. They pool in the doorways and under the overhanging balconies, creating pockets of absolute darkness where the world's noise simply cannot penetrate. You find yourself leaning into the silence, letting it wash over you like a cool stream, stripping away the last remnants of your own internal dialogue until you are simply a vessel for the city's nocturnal spirit. The path begins to wind upward, a gentle incline that makes you aware of the geography of the hills beneath the masonry. The stones here are even more irregular, some of them slightly loose, creating a subtle, shifting music beneath your feet that sounds like a muffled drumbeat. You pass a row of small, shuttered workshops, where the scent of wood smoke still lingers in the rafters, a faint, acrid perfume that is strangely nostalgic and grounding. You notice a small, terracotta lamp left on a high ledge, its oil long since spent, its wick a charred nub that smells faintly of burnt tallow and beeswax. These are the artifacts of a day that has ended, left behind like shells on a beach as the tide of the night goes out. The texture of the air is changing again, becoming slightly more humid as the morning mist begins to thicken in the low-lying hollows. You feel it on your face as a delicate, cool mist, a sensation that is incredibly refreshing and helps to keep you in this state of profound, meditative relaxation. You are moving through a world that feels entirely private, a secret version of Rome that only the sleepless and the dreamers ever get to see. You pass a heavy timber gate that has been reinforced with bronze strips, and as you brush past it, the metal feels cold and smooth, a stark contrast to the rough, splintered grain of the oak. Everything in this environment has a story to tell, a narrative of use and endurance that is etched into every surface. You find yourself focusing on the rhythm of your own heart once more, a steady, reassuring thud that is perfectly synchronized with the slow, deliberate pace of your walk. The city is a masterpiece of stillness, a grand, silent theater where the only actors are the shadows and the pale, fading light of the moon. You turn another corner, and the alley opens up slightly to reveal a small, forgotten shrine built into a niche in a massive retaining wall. The stone figure of the deity is worn almost featureless by centuries of touch and weather, but it still possesses a quiet, dignified presence in the gloom. A few copper coins lie in the dust at its base, their metallic temps mixing with the smell of wet stone. You pause for a second, not to pray, but to simply acknowledge the continuity of human hope and habit in this ancient place. The silence here is so deep that you can hear the faint, high-pitched chirrup of a cricket hiding in a crack in the masonry, a small rhythmic sound that emphasizes the vastness of the surrounding quiet. You continue your journey, your steps feeling even lighter now, as if the city itself is providing the momentum. The ground begins to level out, and you find yourself walking along a path that overlooks a lower district, where the roofs are a jumble of terracotta tiles and thatched reeds, all of them silvered by the dying moonlight. The sense of age here is overwhelming, a physical weight that you feel in the marrow of your bones. Yet it is not a heavy or burdensome feeling. It is the weight of a long, well-earned rest. You notice a small ceramic bowl left out on a windowsill, containing a few drops of water that reflect the last of the stars like tiny, trapped diamonds. The world is full of these small, quiet miracles when you have the time to look for them. You are now moving through a section of the city where the buildings are mostly made of dark, heavy timber and wattle daub, their surfaces feeling slightly warmer and more yielding than the stone. You can hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of a family sleeping just a few feet away on the other side of a thin wall. A sound that is as natural and comforting as the rustle of leaves in a forest. It is a reminder that even in this vast, imperial capital, life is composed of these small, intimate moments of peace and connection. The air is growing colder now, the true cold that precedes the dawn. And you pull your cloak tighter, feeling the soft, scratchy wool against your neck. The silence of the streets has reached its absolute peak. Even the distant sounds of the river and the water clocks seem to have faded into a singular, unified hum of existence. You are walking through the very heart of the night, a time when the boundaries between the physical world and the world of dreams are at their thinnest. You see the faint pale outline of a large, circular archway ahead, leading back toward a slightly more open area. And as you move toward it, you feel a sense of completion, as if you have successfully navigated the deepest, most secret parts of the city's soul. The textures under your feet change once more as you transition from the small cobbles back to larger, flatter paving stones, which feel smooth and cold like the surface of a frozen pond. You notice a subtle shift in the quality of the light. It is no longer the sharp, high-contrast silver of the midnight moon, but has become a softer, more diffused grey that seems to emanate from the stones themselves. The deep, inky blacks of the shadows are beginning to lift, turning into a series of layered, translucent charcoal tones that reveal more of the city's intricate details. You see the grain of the wood in the doors, the individual bricks in the walls, and the fine layer of dust that covers everything like a soft, grey powder. The stillness is still profound, but it is no longer the heavy stillness of deep sleep. It is the expectant, quiet stillness of a world that is just beginning to stir in its dreams. You hear the first, very distant sound of a cock crowing somewhere far beyond the city walls. A thin, lonely sound that cuts through the silence with a strange, haunting beauty. The first light of the approaching dawn does not arrive with a sudden burst, but rather as a slow, rhythmic infusion of pale silver into the deep charcoal of the Roman sky. A gradual thinning of the night's heavy velvet that feels as gentle as the rising and falling of a sleeper's chest. Standing at the threshold where the narrow back alley meets the slightly wider path toward the river, you remain perfectly still, letting the transition wash over you in waves of cooling air and shifting shadows. The atmosphere is undergoing a subtle, alchemical change. The intense, protective isolation of the midnight hours is softening into a sense of calm renewal, a quiet awakening that feels both ancient and entirely new. The stones beneath your feet, which for hours have been islands of dark, cold basalt, now begin to reveal their true colors: deep grays, muted ochres, and the faint, dusty red of weathered brick as the light filters down through the narrow canyon of the insulae. You watch the way the mist, which had pooled like thick milk in the low-lying hollows, begins to stir and fray, pulled apart by invisible currents of air that carry the crisp, sharp scent of the Tiber and the first faint hint of wood smoke from a kitchen fire being kindled blocks away. The silence of the streets is no longer a hollow void. It is now a dense, expectant quiet, a pregnant pause before the city's grand symphony begins. You hear the far-off rhythmic clop-clop of a single mule's hooves on a distant stone road, a sound so clear and lonely in the pre-dawn air that it seems to vibrate through the ground and into the soles of your feet. It is a peaceful sound, a herald of the day's humble commerce, and it does not jar your senses, but rather grounds you in the slow, inevitable return of the world. High above, the highest cornices of the apartment blocks catch the very first, indirect rays of the sun, turning a pale, ethereal rose gold, while the street level remains bathed in a soft pearlescent blue. The textures of the walls around you become incredibly vivid as the shadows lose their opacity. You can see the fine, crystalline structure of the travertine, the individual thumbprints of the long-dead masons in the mortar, and the delicate, silvered webs of spiders that have spent the night weaving their masterpieces across the dark corners of the archways. You find yourself taking a deep, slow breath, the air feeling remarkably clean and cold in your lungs. A refreshing draught that seems to clear away the last remnants of the night's lethargy. The transition is so gradual that you can almost feel the city stretching its stone limbs. The timber beams of the high balconies letting out soft, periodic creaks as they respond to the subtle shift in temperature. You begin to move forward again, your steps slow and meditative, each one a deliberate connection to the waking earth. You pass a small open-fronted shop, where the heavy wooden slats are being quietly removed from the inside. The sound of wood sliding against wood, a low muffled rasp that feels domestic and safe. A soft, warm light spills out from within, not the flickering, orange flame of a night lamp, but the steady, glowing coal of a freshly fed hearth. The smell of baking bread, yeasty and sweet, begins to dominate the alley, a comforting aroma that speaks of nourishment and the start of a new cycle of life. You see a figure in the dimness, an elderly man in a simple linen tunic, sweeping the dust from his doorstep with a bundle of twigs. His movements are slow and rhythmic, a morning prayer written in motion, and he does not look up as you pass. Both of you shared participants in this quiet, grey hour. The neighborhood is revealing itself now, stripped of the night's mystery, but cloaked in a new, soft dignity. You'll notice how the light plays on the surfaces of the communal fountain you passed earlier. The water, which looked like liquid silver in the moonlight, now looks like clear glass, catching the blue of the sky and the pale pink of the clouds. The sound of the splashing water seems brighter, more energetic, as if it too has been refreshed by the darkness. You walk past a row of small, humble dwellings where the shutters are being pushed open one by one. The sound of the iron hinges, a soft, melodic scree that echoes through the stillness. You see the pale, sleepy faces of children peering out into the cool air, their eyes wide and calm as they watch the transition of their world. There is no shouting, no rush, only the slow, quiet unfolding of a routine that has existed for 1,000 years. The sense of limited space that felt so intimate in the dark now feels like a shared sanctuary, a cluster of lives that are woven together by the simple geography of this stone maze. You feel a profound sense of peace, a realization that the night has done its work of healing and restoration, leaving the city ready to face the sun once more. The sky above the rooftops has shifted from indigo to a luminous, pale turquoise, and the morning star is beginning to fade, a silver ghost retreating before the approaching dawn. You find your own spirit lifting with the light, a feeling of light-heartedness that is perfectly balanced by the heavy, grounded relaxation of your body. The shadows are no longer long, reaching fingers. They have become short and soft, huddling at the base of the walls as if seeking a last bit of rest. You pass an alleyway where the morning mist still lingers, looking like a river of white silk draped over the cobbles. And as you walk through it, the dampness feels like a cool, invisible brush against your skin. The textures of the ground beneath your feet continue to change as you move closer to the heart of the district. The stones are larger here, better fitted, and they glow with a soft, internal radiance that makes the road look like a path made of clouds. You are aware of the subtle increase in the city's ambient noise, the distant, melodic call of a street vendor setting up their stall, the soft, rhythmic thump-thump of a rug being beaten against a stone wall, and the high, cheerful chirping of sparrows that have suddenly appeared on the rooftops to greet the sun. These sounds are not intrusions. They are the texture of life returning, a gentle layer of sound that adds to the richness of the morning. You feel a deep connection to the people around you, a shared understanding of the quiet beauty of this transition. You see a woman at a high window, leaning out to pull in a basket on a rope. Her movements fluid and practiced, a silhouette against the brightening sky. She pauses for a moment to look out over the roofs toward the distant, unseen forum, and you sense her quiet reflection, a moment of peace before the demands of the day take hold. The air is growing warmer now, the true cold of the pre-dawn giving way to a soft, temperate glow that feels like a physical embrace. You notice the way the light catches the greenery spilling over a garden wall, the deep, waxy green of ivy, the silvery leaves of an olive tree, and the bright, defiant red of a single geranium in a clay pot. These colors, which were lost in the monochromatic world of the night, are now vibrant and full of energy, a visual representation of the city's renewal. You find yourself approaching a small, elevated platform at a street corner, perhaps a place where public announcements are made, and you decide to step up onto it to get a better view of the neighborhood. As you reach the top and turn around, the world opens up before you in a tapestry of soft, early daylight. The tenements of the Suburra rise up in a jumble of terracotta and brick, their surfaces catching the light in 1,000 different ways, creating a landscape of infinite complexity and quiet beauty. You can see the smoke from dozens of small fires rising straight up into the still air, a series of thin, grey plumes that mark the locations of homes and hearths. The streets below are no longer empty. They are filled with the slow, purposeful movement of a neighborhood waking up. You see a group of laborers in their dark tunics walking together toward the main roads, their voices low and pleasant, their shadows stretching out behind them. You see a water carrier with his heavy yoke, moving with a steady, practiced gait that shows the strength in his legs. You see the first of the tavernas opening their doors, the smell of cooked lentils and mulled wine drifting out into the cool air. The neighborhood is a living, breathing entity, and from your quiet vantage point, you can see the beauty in its every detail. The light is now strong enough to reveal the true scale of the city, the vastness of the buildings and the depth of the valleys, yet it remains soft and kind, a light that does not judge the poverty or the neglect, but rather highlights the resilience and the life that thrives within it. You feel a sense of immense calm and belonging, a realization that you have been a part of this city's secret, nocturnal life, and now you are a part of its waking dream. The transition from night to dawn is complete, and the world is bathed in a clear, honest light that promises a day of quiet purpose and endurance. You watch as the sun finally clears the distant hills, a golden sliver that sends a long, brilliant beam of light down the length of the street, turning the dust motes in the air into a river of gold and illuminating the faces of the people below. You feel the warmth of that light on your own face, a gentle heat that feels like a benediction. The night is gone, but its peace remains within you, a steady, unshakable core of stillness that will stay with you throughout the day. You continue to stand there for a long moment, simply observing the neighborhood as it settles into its morning rhythm, feeling the heavy, comfortable weight of your own existence and the infinite, quiet beauty of the world around you. The sun has finally crested the jagged horizon of the eastern hills, sending long, slanted fingers of amber light through the narrow gaps between the tall insulae. And as you stand upon your small stone platform, you feel the neighborhood begin to stir with a slow, rhythmic vitality that is as steady and inevitable as the tide. This is not the jarring, frantic awakening of a modern city, but a gradual unfolding of human presence, a soft transition from the deep, velvet silence of the night to the low-pitched, industrious hum of the early Roman morning. The air around you is still crisp and holds the refreshing dampness of the river mist, but you can feel the first subtle hints of the day's warmth beginning to press against the cool stone walls, drawing out the earthy, ancient scent of sun-baked brick and old mortar. Below you, the street is no longer a river of silver shadows. It has become a textured tapestry of activity, where each movement is deliberate and follows a pattern established by centuries of necessity. You watch as a woman in a simple, undyed tunic steps out onto a high balcony, her movements fluid and unhurried as she shakes out a heavy wool blanket, the fabric snapping softly in the still air like a distant, muffled drumbeat. From the apartment below her, you hear the rhythmic, metallic scrape of a bronze key turning in a stubborn lock, followed by the low, resonant groan of a heavy wooden door swinging open on its hinges. These sounds are intimate and grounding, marking the boundary between the private sanctuary of the home and the communal life of the district. You notice the way the light catches the fine plumes of steam rising from the many cookshops that are now beginning to breathe, their hearths fed with charcoal and dried vine branches. The aroma of the morning begins to thicken, and shift gone is the sharp, cold scent of the night, replaced by the comforting, toasted smell of pools, the thick grain porridge that is the foundation of the Roman breakfast, and the sharp, savory temps of garlic and salted fish being prepared for the first laborers. You feel a sense of profound, steady relaxation as you observe these routines, realizing that there is a deep dignity in this repetition, a quiet resilience in the way these people reclaim their world from the darkness. A few doors down, a group of young apprentices emerges from a narrow stairwell, their voices low and melodic as they speak in hushed tones, their leather satchels slung over their shoulders. They move with the easy, rolling gait of those who know every uneven stone of their neighborhood, their shadows stretching out before them like long, dark harbingers of the coming day. You watch a water carrier pause at the communal fountain, the one that sounded like a crystalline bell in the deep night. Now, the sound of the water is a steady, purposeful roar as it fills his heavy ceramic jars. He moves with a quiet, practiced strength, his muscles rippling beneath his tunic as he heaves the yoke onto his shoulders, the water sloshing softly within the jars in a rhythmic, hypnotic cadence that follows his footsteps. Everything you see is a study in calm, productive energy. You notice a small child sitting on a doorstep, blinking slowly in the new light as he plays with a handful of smooth river pebbles, his movements focused and peaceful, entirely contained within his own small world. The textures of the neighborhood are now fully revealed in the honest, golden light. You see the deep, weathered grain of the timber beams, the patches of faded red and yellow paint on the storefronts, and the way the dust of the road has settled into the cracks of the paving stones, like a fine, grey powder. The sense of limited space that characterized the night has transformed into a feeling of cozy, bustling proximity, where every neighbor is a familiar silhouette and every sound is a known quantity. You feel the weight of your own limbs becoming lighter as you watch the city wake up, a gentle infusion of morning energy that matches the rising sun. Far off, toward the more affluent districts, you hear the distant, high-pitched chime of a bell. But here in the Subura, the passage of time is marked by more organic sounds, the rhythmic thwack of a baker's paddle hitting a stone oven, the soft, repetitive whistle of a craftsman as he sets his tools in order, and the gentle, conversational chirrup of the sparrows that have now claimed the high ledges and balconies. You find yourself focusing on a single window across the way, where a small pot of green herbs sits on the sill, its leaves trembling slightly in the first invisible breath of the morning breeze. The light is now strong enough to reach the very bottom of the narrowest alleys, turning the grey cobbles into a soft, glowing ochre and revealing the small shrines and altars that dot the walls, their surfaces smudged with the soot of many years of devotion. You feel a deep, quiet connection to this landscape, a sense that by witnessing its transition from night to day, you have become a part of its enduring story. The air is growing warmer by the minute, and the last of the river mist has dissolved into a thin, transparent haze that gives the city a soft, ethereal glow. You notice a man setting up a small table near the corner of the square, laying out a few loaves of bread and small jars of honey. His movements are slow and methodical, a quiet ritual of commerce that has no need for shouting or haste. You see a group of women gathering at the fountain to talk as they fill their jars, their laughter a soft, pleasant ripple that adds a layer of human music to the environment. The feeling of the district is one of immense, unshakable stability, a world that knows exactly what it is and how to endure. You realize that while the grand monuments of Rome may represent its power, these quiet, crowded streets represent its soul, the heartbeat of a million ordinary lives that keep the city alive. You find yourself breathing in the scent of the morning one last time, a rich, complex aroma of wood smoke, toasted grain, and the clean, metallic temps of the cooling stones. The shadows are now short and crisp, defining the shapes of the buildings with a new clarity, and the sky above is a brilliant, unclouded blue that promises a day of steady, purposeful light. You feel a sense of completion, a readiness to move on from this hidden corner and return to the wider world, carrying the peace of the Roman night within you like a hidden treasure. Your muscles, which have been so relaxed and still, now feel a gentle, waking strength, an invitation to descend from your platform and begin your own journey for the day. You take one last look around the small square, memorizing the way the light catches the peeling plaster, the way the water sparkles in the fountain, and the quiet, determined faces of the people beginning their work. It is a beautiful, humble scene, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to find order and grace in any environment. You step down from the stone ledge, your sandals making a firm, clear sound on the ground, a sound that feels like a period at the end of a long, beautiful sentence. The street is now alive, but it is a life that is still soft and manageable, a slow-motion awakening that does not jar the senses but rather invites them to participate. You feel a deep, heavy sense of satisfaction, a knowledge that you have seen the heart of Rome at its most vulnerable and its most resilient. As you begin to walk toward the exit of the district, moving away from the narrow alleys and back toward the larger thoroughfares that lead to the river, you find yourself moving with a slow, graceful rhythm, your mind still quiet and your heart at ease. The world is waking up, the sun is rising, and you are part of the great unfolding mystery of the day. You pass the baker's shop again, and this time a small, warm loaf is placed on the counter as you go by, the steam rising from it in a thin, fragrant curl. You smile to yourself, a quiet, internal gesture of gratitude, and continue your slow stroll. The buildings seem to stand a little taller in the morning light, their weathered faces proud and steadfast, having survived another night in the eternal city. You feel the warmth of the sun on your back now, a steady, encouraging pressure that guides you forward. The transition is complete. The night is a memory, the dawn has passed, and the day is here, full of the soft, rhythmic sounds of a neighborhood that has learned the secret of endurance. You walk on, a silent observer no longer, but a participant in the waking world, moving slowly and peacefully toward the horizon, leaving the narrow streets of the Subura behind, but carrying their stillness and their strength with you into the brightening light. The journey through the shadows has come to its natural end, and as you reach the wider road where the first of the heavy carts are beginning to move, you feel a profound sense of rest and renewal, ready to meet the day with a spirit that has been washed clean by the quiet, ancient beauty of the Roman night. Your steps are steady, your breath is slow, and the city of Rome is rising up to meet you in all its rugged, honest glory. The air is bright, the world is wide, and you are at peace, moving forward into the light of a new beginning, a silent witness to the eternal rhythm of life and the enduring power of the morning. As you begin your slow, deliberate walk away from the heart of the Subura, leaving the leaning tenements and the narrow, winding alleys behind, you feel a profound sense of heavy, contented peace settling into every fiber of your being. The transition from the deep, protective shadows of the night to the soft, honeyed light of the early Roman morning has been a slow and graceful dance. And as you move toward the wider thoroughfares that lead back toward the river, you carry the stillness of those ancient stones within you like a quiet, internal flame. Your sandals make a rhythmic, grounding sound against the larger paving blocks, a soft thwip-thwad that seems to echo the steady, unhurried beating of your own heart. The air is now fully transformed, no longer the biting cold of the pre-dawn, but a gentle, invigorating coolness that carries the scent of damp earth, wood smoke, and the faint, sweet aroma of the first bread being pulled from the ovens. You find yourself reflecting on the journey you have taken through the darker, poorer neighborhoods of this eternal city. And there is no sense of fear or tension in your memories, only a deep, abiding respect for the quiet resilience and the hidden beauty you observed in the silence. You remember the way the moonlight turned the crumbling brick into silver, the way the communal fountains whispered secrets to the dark, and the soft, rhythmic breathing of families huddled together for warmth and safety behind thin wooden shutters. These images drift through your mind like slow-moving clouds, each one bringing a fresh wave of relaxation and a sense of profound connection to the vast, human tapestry of history. You are walking away from the labyrinth now, but the labyrinth has left its mark on you, a sense of perspective that makes the grand monuments and the marble palaces seem like mere ornaments compared to the honest, rugged reality of the streets you have just traversed. The world around you is waking up with a soft, melodic hum, the distant call of a bird, the rhythmic splash of water, the low murmur of neighbors greeting one another, but it all feels secondary to the deep, resonant quiet that you have found within yourself. You move with a fluidity that requires no effort, your limbs feeling heavy and warm, as if the very air is supporting your weight. The light of the sun is now a steady, golden presence on your back. A comforting pressure that encourages you to let go of any remaining thoughts of the day ahead. You pass a final, low archway of dark tufa stone, and as you emerge onto a path that overlooks the Tiber, you see the river moving silently in the distance, a ribbon of molten lead and silver that flows toward the sea with the same inexorable grace as the passage of time itself. The mist is almost entirely gone now, leaving the city sharp and clear in the morning light. But it is a clarity that does not jar. It is a soft, forgiving light that highlights the endurance of every stone and the dignity of every shadow. You find your pace slowing even further, your steps becoming shorter and more delicate as you prepare to transition from the world of the journey to the world of deep, restorative rest. The sounds of the neighborhood you left behind are now just a faint, musical vibration on the air, a reminder of the life that continues to pulse in the dark corners, steady and true. You feel a sense of immense gratitude for the opportunity to have been a silent witness to that world, to have seen the city of Rome when it was stripped of its masks and revealed in its raw, beautiful soul. The path you are on is wide and smooth, and the rhythmic sound of your footsteps begins to fade into the background of the morning, becoming a part of the city's own breathing. You feel a wave of intense, comfortable lethargy washing over you, a gentle command from your own body to find a place of final stillness. The journey is complete, the story has reached its natural conclusion, and all that remains is the profound, heavy peace of a night well spent in the heart of history. You imagine yourself finding a soft, quiet place to lie down, perhaps on a bed of cool linen in a room that smells of lavender and old wood, where the light of the sun is filtered through heavy curtains into a soft, golden gloom. As you settle into this thought, you feel the weight of your eyelids becoming impossible to resist, a beautiful, magnetic pull that draws you down into the velvet depths of sleep. The city of Rome is behind you, its shadows and its lights, its struggles and its peace, all of it contained within the quiet chamber of your memory. You are safe, you are still, and you are surrounded by the ancient protective energy of a world that has seen 1,000 generations of dreamers. The silence returns to your mind, not as an absence, but as a presence, a warm and heavy blanket that tucks you in and shields you from the noise of the universe. The rhythm of your breathing is now the only sound you hear, a slow, deep, and perfect cycle that carries you further and further away from the waking world. You feel the softness of the bed beneath you, the coolness of the pillow against your cheek, and the absolute, unshakable certainty that everything is exactly as it should be. The ancient streets, the flickering lamps, the uneven stones, they are all fading now, turning into a soft, grey mist that dissolves into the peaceful dark of your own mind. You are drifting on a sea of quiet, a vast and gentle ocean of rest where the currents are warm and the stars are always bright. There is no more walking to do, no more observing, no more thinking. There is only the pure, uncomplicated joy of sleep. The journey has led you here, to this moment of ultimate surrender, to this perfect sanctuary of the spirit. You let the last of the world's colors fade, leaving only the soft, comforting blackness of a dreamless rest. The air is still, the world is at peace, and you are finally, completely home. The weight of the night is a gift, a blessing of silence and restoration that you accept with a quiet, open heart. You sink deeper and deeper into the warmth, feeling your consciousness expand and then contract into a single, glowing point of peace. The story is over, the path is finished, and the night has done its work. You are asleep now, a part of the eternal rhythm of the city, a dreamer among millions, protected by the stone and the stars and the infinite, loving silence of the Roman night. Sleep now, deeply and truly, and let the ancient world watch over you until the sun is high and the day is new. You are at rest, you are safe, you are at peace. Good night.